Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Play Great Ace Attorney 2, Ryunosuke's Resolve. This is Vita Fuser. On our last episode, we heard from Daily Vigil, and we also heard from Eugene Mikatoba. And this, oh boy, this case is going a lot deeper than we thought. We gotta go to the governor's office next. There he is. Oh, back again, are ya? Yes. Hello. I've heard all about your investigations. I read the report just now. You found them, eh? Vigil. Yeah, luckily. Well, anywho, the laddie doesn't work here no more. Suitcase is naught to do with Barclay. I wouldn't like you to get the wrong idea about that. Of course, yes. Mr. Vigil stopped working here 10 years ago now, so... We've seen his dismissal notice, haven't we? He was given a job. Aye, Kimmer. You can very well. So how about the wee handcuff biscuit? Oh, they really are little handcuffs. And as hard as irons, too. So, what's brought you down here of the day? Well, there's something else we'd like to ask you about, actually. Is that so? We believe there might have been a document that disappeared from Genshin Asogi's cell. I think it's been called the Asogi Papers or something. Did I not say, Gregson's death is not to do with things that might have happened at Berkeley? Leave the past in the past, laddie. Let's not fool about with irrelevant details. His expressions changed completely. We're clearly onto something here. That murderer's botched execution and the whole miserable escape. They were Barclay's darkest hour, eh? A shocking embarrassment. Because the convict had a collaborator on the prison staff, you mean? Aye. For shame. The coroner who confirmed the death of the man after his execution, Courtney Seath, and my chief warder at the time, Vigil, who was in charge of the whole affair. But Mr. Vigil says he didn't know anything about it. The rascal would not say otherwise, eh? More handcuffs. Oh, how could I say no? You can never have too much iron in your diet. Yes, you can, actually. Magneto says otherwise. When Mr. Vigil was handed his dismissal notice as a result of what had happened, he was so despairing he jumped out of your office window, didn't he? I didn't like to say it, but that's just Vigil trying to get out of it. Do you not think he wouldn't have jumped out from the shock of his crimes being exposed, eh? I do. You wouldn't say otherwise, though, would you? Of course, I cannot shun all responsibility myself. I shouldn't have let him deceive me. Actually, there's barely anybody that kens what went on at the time now. With Gregson having been murdered and Dr. Seath forbidden from having any visitors. No visitors. Someone obviously doesn't want her giving anything away. Well, we're not going home empty-handed. And I wouldn't dream of sending you packing with no Kimmer. Here, take a handcuff or two. Oh, well, it should be rude to say no. You wouldn't want to become anemic. I suppose, if there's anybody who might still ken about what happened back then, it'd be that lass from the forensic division, Maria Gorey. Maria Gorey? Oh, her daughter. Aye, see his daughter. She didn't have no more, just the one. But the wee bairn's following her mum's footsteps. You didn't ever see her without a scalpel in her hand. this. Eh, where'd she spring from? And did she just call the doctor Mama? Dr. C's daughter, Maria Gori. We could do with talking to her. Alrighty. So, she's Dr. C's daughter, but her surname is Gori? Aye, that's some family history, I'm sure, but I didn't ken the ins and outs of it. She grew up watching her mum working with the bodies of folk who died in strange circumstances, and decided to do the same with her own life. I cannot understand it myself. So perhaps she was driven by a deep respect for her mother. Perhaps. Anywho, she was in charge of Gregson's autopsy, I believe. Right, and the coroner responsible for this incomplete report. Someone told me once that the wee lassie always loved her mom's stories about cutting up bodies. There's even a rumor that she used to listen to the funeral march as a lullaby. That's surreal right there. Well then, perhaps her mother might have told her about the autopsy from the case 10 years ago. Aye, I'd say there's a fighting chance at least. After all, that was a life-changing case for all of us. We really need to speak to Miss Gori herself about this, I think. Well, thank you very much. I'm not happy about any part of this. It took years for Londoners to finally forget the whole professor business. Can you not give up on this, laddie? Stop asking pointless questions. I'm sorry. I don't like dredging up these painful memories for everyone. Can you not just stay away now? Leave me alone and dinna come back here, eh? Sorry, but we need one last question. How do you come to ken about that, laddie? There's not many folk even here in the prison who've heard of those papers. Well, I can't tell them what Mr. Vigil told me. I'm afraid our sources must remain confidential, sir. We've been led to believe the papers are actually a last will and testament. Is that right? The professor's, or rather, Genshin Asogi's. Aye, that's right. You're well informed, Jimmy. Oh, is that the end of the silent treatment? But then after the convict's execution, it mysteriously vanished from his cell, didn't it? Heavens no! You're off at cock there! I think you didn't quite get your facts straight. It was there in the cell, exactly where it should have been. Not what we heard elsewhere. Let me just have a wee look around here. I'm sure I can find it. Aye, here you are. See? The last will and testament of Genshin Asogi, written with a calligraphy brush. Of course, I cannot read a word of those Japanese squiggles. It's too far away, but I can't tell if that's hiragana or if that's kanji. But I mind it says, he leaves all his worldly possessions to his son back on his homeland. Yes, that's correct. That's the gist of it. So these are the Asogi papers. Aye, of course they are. Papers written by Asogi, no doubt about it. There's no mystery here, laddie. That's your law. After all the stramish and a slice-starve and execution, we sent the man's possession back to his clan in Japan, and that was the end of it. I think we ought to make a record of this, Mr. Naruhodo, just in case. Alright, that's it. One thing before you go on your way, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh, yes? Those papers are not to do with Gregson's death. I'd prefer it if you did not make no mention of them outside this office. Or rather, I wouldn't just prefer it, considering it an order from the highest levels of our government. I understand. Alright. we're done there. Now to the next place we gotta go. The prosecutor's office. The 2nd of November. So, this is the office of Prosecutor Asogi now, is it? With a scale model there, huh? Kazuma-sama is doing so well for himself. Even though he's always forced to kneel on the floor, Japanese style, in that dark corner. It's his habit to sit Seiza style when he's working. And there he is. Kazuma. I thought it wouldn't be long before you paid me a visit, Ryunosuke. I was right about what I said, wasn't I? Sorry? That you have all the makings of a great defense lawyer. Well, I always believed you'd fulfill your dream of advocating in the British courts. I just never imagined for 1 second that it would be as a prosecutor. Seeing you stand in a foreign courtroom, so gallantly realizing your dream, Kazuma-sama, I'm truly happy for you. And I'm truly thankful for you, Judicial Assistant Mikotoba. Ryunosuke, I always thought it would be fun for you and I to shake up the British legal system a little together. This isn't quite how I envisioned it, but I suppose it's just another twist of fate. I've learned a lot of things during my time in London. Damn straight. That how Susato's son's father was himself a visiting student here once with Judge Jigoku. And about what happened with your father. And you'll have no difficulty understanding why I had no choice. Why I had to find a way to get to Britain as a visiting student myself. It's all about that case. I want to hear it from you, Kazuma. As you wish, Ryunosuke. Alright, time to hear it from him himself. It's getting on for a year now, since what happened on the SS Berea. Since you died. We were heading across the oceans from Japan to Great Britain. When a bizarre series of coincidences led to those tragic events. I thought I'd lost my best friend forever. I must have been unconscious for a long time. When I woke, I was lying on a bed. It was a narrow little room. There was a posy of flowers by the pillow. It took me a little while to realize I was in the cabin of a ship. I slipped out of the room and headed up onto the deck. Were you already suffering from amnesia at that point? Yes. I didn't know what had happened or where I was. There was just this voice in my head. You have something to do. Something no one else can know about. Go to Great Britain. Your task awaits you there. It was a calling I couldn't ignore. It compelled me relentlessly. Out on deck, I saw that I was on a huge steamship and we were docked in a large port. It must have been Hong Kong. Yes, it must have been. Presumably just before they were about to carry your body off the ship. I had no idea of the situation, but I'd have the feeling that this was in some way my last chance. So I concealed myself among the disembarking passengers and went ashore. Then I disappeared in the crowded streets of that foreign port city, so I could plan my onward journey on to Great Britain. Just under a year ago, with all my past memories lost to me, I was left behind in Hong Kong. Everything was foreign to me. The sights, the sounds, the smells. My head reeled. I was truly at a loss. I realized now I'd escaped as a dead man, with nothing but the clothes on my back. No money, of course. Oh, how terrifying for you. Luckily, though, I had 2 feathers in my cap. One being your knowledge of English, I suppose. That's right. And on the back of that, I was able to pick up some work as a deckhand on a cargo ship. Eventually, after calling at countless ports, I finally arrived at Dover. It must have been some 3 months ago now. Your formidable tenacity of purpose showing itself again. I mean, the man had lost his memory and had literally nothing to his name. But he still managed to make his way to London on the opposite side of the world. Of course, I had no idea why I'd moved heaven on earth to get here at that point. So how did you end up becoming Lord Van Zeek's apprentice then? That can only be called an extraordinary stroke of luck, really. You see, I was stopped at the border because I had no papers. They took me straight to Scotland Yard. And by sheer coincidence, Lord Strongheart was there to attend a meeting. That's when the second feather in my cap came to play. Would that have been your knowledge of the law? Exactly. Lord Strongheart was curious about an Easterner with intimate knowledge of British law. He took me back with him to the Supreme Court and assigned me to the prosecutor's office. Then 9 days ago, you finally got your memory back after the trial involving Trevor. Yes, I did. Your father, Genshin. Ever since I first met you at Yume, you talked about your dream. Mark my words, Ryunosuke. I'll be chosen as a visiting student and make my way to Great Britain someday. Did you know the entire time about what happened to your father there? 16 years ago. When my father left on an exciting trip to Great Britain, I was just a boy. We took a photograph together the day before his departure. It's my last memory of him. But what I remember most about my father is his unswerving sense of justice. 6 years after he left, a gentleman called at our family home. He told me Genshin, my father, had been taken ill in England and passed away. It was Professor Mikotoba, your father, Susato-san. Oh my! Ever since then, Professor was very good to me. He even helped to fund my university education at Yume. I'll be forever in his debt. Oh boy. But nevertheless, I just couldn't bring myself to believe what he told me. Oh. Then one day a letter arrived at our house from Britain. There was no indication of the sender, so I opened it assuming it was from an old acquaintance of my father. What I read in that letter changed my entire life. What did it say? It said that my father had been a mass murderer, and the writer cursed the Asogi name. Oh no! As a result of that letter, I found out what had been hidden from me all those years. Well, that's a fine how-do-you-do. Presumably the letter was sent from a relative of one of the victims. If whoever it was had been a member of the judiciary, he could have been present at the closed trial. The letter revealed that my father had been sentenced to death, executed for being a killer. I'm so sorry you had to find out that way. I imagine the British government did its very best to silence whoever sent that letter. But someone who knew the truth and could bear the resentment is always going to be a problem. Still, it could have been written by anyone. Why would you believe such a thing? There was a newspaper cutting included with the letter. It was the first I'd ever heard of the professor and his terrible killing spree. Well, what did my father have to say about the letter? I couldn't bring myself to show it to him. Why not? Because he deliberately concealed the truth from me by telling me my father was taken by a fatal illness. That couldn't have been easy for him. and he'd done it out of consideration for my feelings. So instead, I showed the letter to Judge Jigoku. Oh, to the other visiting student. He faltered for the briefest moments, but then he just laughed the letter off. But in that moment I saw it on his face. He was undeniably shocked, shaken momentarily before recovering his poise. A year later, my bereaved mother succumbed to the strain of grief, and she too passed away. That's when I made up my mind that one day, without fail, I would cross the seas to Britain and seek the truth for myself. I figured as much. The truth about my father, Ryunosuke. And I wouldn't let anyone stand in my way. Oh, Kazuma-sama. When we learned today in court, turned things completely on their head. It was an impressive piece of lawyering, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Lord Van Zieks isn't the Reaper, you know. I almost don't want to believe it myself. But it turns out that Inspector Gregson himself, the victim, was. It's clear the Inspector was behind the Reaper's activity all along. What? You mean you knew? The real question is, who's been giving orders to the Inspector? Yes, Barack Van Zieks is the real Reaper. And I know that 10 years ago, it was him who decided my father must be a mass murderer and sent him to his grave. No. He was seeing that justice was done as the law dictates. He's not to blame. Ultimately, it's people who condemn people. The law is just a tool they use to do it. And when a man condemns another, he must take responsibility for his actions. Of course he must. But I know for certain that my father would never have taken another man's life. Kazuma, on the contrary, my father's life was taken by the Reaper. Oh boy, this ain't gonna end well. We're gonna have to present this. This came up in the trial, didn't it? As something in a little dubious, I mean. The fact that no time of death was recorded on Inspector Gregson's autopsy report. Yes, there were some unexpected turns in the courtroom earlier. The suggestion you came with certainly took everyone by surprise. The idea that the victim died the previous day at some other location is quite something. Well, considering when the pocket watch had stopped and the scorch marks on the candle, it's certainly a distinct possibility the evidence and the scene both point to it. To be honest, it bothered me too. So I paid a visit to the autopsy room earlier. The coroner responsible wasn't there, but I got a name. It's Dr. Gory. If it wouldn't be trouble to you, Kazuma-sama, we'd very much like to speak with the coroner too. Of course, the last thing I want is for anything to be brushed under the carpet. Scotland Yard's autopsy laboratory is behind Lowgate Cemetery. By Barclay Prison, you mean? You know it, do you? The prison where my father was incarcerated and robbed of his life. Kazuma-sama. Well, thank you. We'll pay a visit to the laboratory later today. Ryunosuke, I want to thank you. What for? For this, you safeguarded the soul of the Asogi clan. Blood is a famous sword that's been in your family for generations. My only slight regret is I never got the chance to draw it before I returned it to you. Karuma is said to have been forged by a master swordsmith during the Sengoku Warring States period. Muramasa or Masamune? I come from a long lineage of warriors, many of whom were expert swordsmen. Well then, you're a chip off the old block, I'd say. That blade, Karuma, is a symbol of the Asogi clan's honor and might. Apparently, one of my father's apprentices even took the blade's name for a surname. Really? Karuma? That does sound formidable, that's for sure. Don't tell me that Karuma's descended from this guy. Manfred von Karma. Please. Please don't. 16 years ago, when my father was a visiting student here in London, he had this sword forever at his side, which is why it means so much to me that I have it by my side again now, too. And that is all thanks to you. It was an honor. Now, I have preparations to make for tomorrow. Perhaps I said a little too much. Kazuma, you've changed. No, Ryunosuke, I haven't changed at all. It's you who've changed. I can completely understand your resentment of Lord Van Zeke's given what happened. But the fact is, those events in this case are, well, unrelated. Is that what you want to say? How can you be so sure? Yeah, there are way too many coincidences. What do you mean? Never mind. That man is the Reaper, and it's for that reason the inspector was killed. I'm gonna prove as much in court tomorrow. By whatever means necessary. Don't go Aristotle means on us. Just don't. That's never gonna end well. I can't let you do that, Kazuma. I know you'll do what you have to as a lawyer, but I'm sure I don't need to tell you that I won't be taking any prisoners in the courtroom. I'd expect nothing less. Until tomorrow, then, in the Old Bailey. Alright, with that out of the way. Time to go to the forensic. There. Nearly done here. We're nearly done. This place is very pink now. This place really is creepy, isn't it? Well, being a dead room, it's probably full of the spirits of the dissected. But actually, there's a rather pleasing scent of roses in the air. Well, being a dead room. The coroner probably needs a bold scent like that to mask the odor of death. Iris, do you think we could change the subject? Someone's sharpening something. That ain't Wile E. Coyote trying to catch the Roadrunner. Dr. Gory? What? That noise before. I was sharpening my tools. I'd be dead meat if I didn't keep a perfectly keen edge on them. Right. When following the collagen fibers in the dermis, an expertly sharpened scalpel cuts like cheese. Would you like a demonstration? That's a carving knife. Oh, yes, please. I'd love to see. Then, I think you'll do nicely. No! I wouldn't do nicely at all. I mean, maybe some other time. Is that a tut? Well, we came here to ask questions, so we will ask those questions next time. See you guys then.
Have no doubt, I'm in control. You
ghost.